Have you ever stopped to think about just how little of an impact your actions have in the grand scheme of things? And I'm not talking about some kind of life is meaningless nonsense. No, that's not true. You matter. I'm referring to the feeling you get when you sit down to write a script for a video and then realize, oh god, every human on planet Earth has already talked about this. You all know what a silent voice is. It's one of the most popular, celebrated, and respected works to come out of this medium in the last decade. It's so big that it even gained some traction in the West, to the point where a significant amount of people ended up lamenting the fact that it was snubbed by the Oscars in favor of Boss Baby, which is the funniest thing I've learned in a very long time. The point is, it's daunting. I don't know what I can say that hasn't already been said, and I don't know if I can contribute anything that will make me stand out from the rest of the crowd. But I'll be damned if I ever let worries like these keep me from showering my favorite studio with praise. I first watched A Silent Voice a little over a year ago. It was one of the first anime films I ever saw. I remember liking it well enough, but as the months rolled by and dozens of other works took up space in my mind, my memory of this movie became foggy at best. This gave me the exciting opportunity to go into a Kyoto animation work with a fresh mindset for the first time. I got to watch it with my brain turned on without any kind of preconceived opinions. And after coming out the other side, I'm happy to say that this is one of the most well-made films I have ever seen. It was directed by Naoko Yamada, known for her work on These Guys, and it tells a grounded story about some excessively broken people due to mistreatment from their peers and their own misdeeds, searching for redemption and companionship. If that sounds like it's a match made in heaven, that's because it is. Yamada's greatest strength as a director plays beautifully into the strengths of this studio. She's fantastic at depicting scenarios in the most realistic way possible, and you can see how perfect they were for this movie just by looking at it. I think you all know where I'm going with this. Video after video, I go on and on about the level of detail in these works, and every time I do, I always assume that I won't need to bring it up again, but they just keep one-upping themselves. In this movie's case, they accomplished the unthinkable and gave a voice to somebody who doesn't have one. Shoko Nishimiya is deaf, so most of the time she uses sign language to hide her broken speech from others. Now, in most cases with animation, I feel like it's primarily the voice actor's job to breathe life into the characters on screen. Look at how many works default to static images or limited animation because they know their voice talent will let them get away with it. It wasn't the fact that Solid Snake looked like a wooden mannequin with body armor on that made him feel real, it was David Hayter's exceptional performance.
Behind D. Colonel, what's a Russian gunship doing here?
But when you have to approach this from the opposite angle and you don't have the luxury of letting your character be this lifeless model that spends its days staring into the void, most studios out there would be screwed. They don't have the time, dedication, or budget to go that extra mile, to sell every emotion, to fine-tune things to the point where you can always tell what a character is thinking from just a glance, while staying away from over-exaggeration. Lo and behold, here it is, and I think what they accomplished with Shoko is phenomenal. But believe it or not, there's a character in this movie whose depiction I enjoy even more, and it might just be because we get to know him the most. Shoya Ishida is our main protagonist, and he starts this movie with the exact opposite demeanor that Shoko has. Instead of being shy and reserved, he encapsulates the cocky, life of the party attitude of a kid who's just trying to be cool. When he sits down at a desk, he plops himself on top of it and crosses one leg over the other. When he puts chalk back on the chalkboard, he doesn't set it down gently, he laser beams it into the little shelf right below it. And unfortunately for Shoko, instead of being kind like she is, Shoya is downright malicious. If you gave yourself an idea of the meanest, most despicable thing an elementary school kid could do to a classmate, Shoya probably did it. Leading the charge to socially ostracize her, blaming her for the fact that her only friend transferred schools, and causing thousands of dollars in damage attached to her hearing aids. I know, kids suck. And to make matters worse, when Shoya's behavior catches up to him, he gets sold out by everyone else in the class, a class full of students who either laughed along with the harassment or actively participated in it. Shoko transfers schools, and now all that hatred is shifted to Shoya. He gets bullied, dehumanized, and isolated from his peers all the way up until where we first meet him in the movie. A high school student who quits his job, sells all his stuff, withdraws all his money and puts it under his mom's pillow, and then attempts to talk to Shoko one last time before throwing himself off of a bridge. That's a big contrast, and I'm going to get into how well written it is later. For now, I just want to focus on the exceptional way in which the audio and visuals tell his story. We see shots from his perspective frequently, and in almost all of them, he's staring at the floor. We hear what he hears as he walks through the halls at school. Everything is distorted and muffled. His mind fills in the blanks that he intentionally leaves unfilled. He interprets every glance as one of contempt and pretends that every conversation around him is about making fun of him. Even when others reach out to him, a massive X obscures their faces. He's not allowed to connect with others. He doesn't deserve to. It's a very raw and unfiltered experience that puts you inside of his head whether you like it or not. Some scenes are so hauntingly real that they're uncomfortable to watch in the best kind of way. Take a look at this scene where Shoya locks himself in the bathroom after getting overwhelmed with attention towards the end of the film. Did you feel that? The way he tries to brace himself for more interactions to come while at the same time swallowing himself whole with his own self-contempt. When I saw this scene again, I had to question how they nailed it so vividly. Did they waltz into a high school bathroom, film some guy having a mental breakdown, and then draw over it? Like, that's messed up, you shouldn't do that, but even so, this looks really good. And when you see Shoya slowly but surely crawl his way towards a brighter future, you get these scenes where the X is peeled off the face of a character he managed to connect with. You hear this ringing in your ear as if a new sound is being let in for the first time in years, as if Shoya in his horrific mental state made himself deaf to the world around him, forming an exceptional character parallel between him and Shoko because it shows just how similar they are now. When these two become friends, it seems like everybody tries to drive them away from each other. It's not normal, they're two completely different animals, a bully and a victim, a predator and its prey. Why would either of them ever think it's okay to be together? Well, because when you dive deeper than a surface level interpretation, you find that they share a lot of things in common, including their pain. They both desperately long for relationships with others, but lack any kind of courage to pursue them. They both feel guilt about the past and want to right those wrongs, not to satisfy themselves, they wouldn't dare think they deserve to, but because it's only right to try to alleviate the misery they've caused others. And in case you don't remember how this tangent started, I got all of it from one little sound effect. I brought it up because I want you to understand just how much these details matter, how much they contribute to the depth of this film, and I've only barely scratched the surface. I could sit here and talk for hours about everything they packed in here. The minimalist score that dynamically reacts to the actions on screen, or the fact that they managed to organically add light moments of humor to such a heavy film. But I'd rather not take up too much of your time. Let's shift gears for a minute and talk about the writing process for this video. While rewatching shows or movies for videos, I like to have a Google Doc open on a second monitor so I can take notes on details I notice and things I want to talk about. I try to figure out how the plot ties itself together and what the motivations of the characters are, so I don't have to watch everything again just to get a clearer picture of things. And it was through this exercise that I learned just how well crafted the flow of information in this movie is. Keep in mind that while I had seen this film before and remembered what happened, the reasons for why had all but vanished from my mind over time. I was constantly getting stumped by certain details. A lot of actions didn't make sense in the moment. It got to the point where I'd have to pause the movie to go consult with an expert just so I could understand. So, have you seen A Silent Voice?
Yeah, I sure have.
Alright, good. There's something that I've never understood about it, and it's just been frustrating me to no end, so I wanted to get an expert opinion.
Yeah, what can Mr. Genius answer for you today?
You know the pink hair girl, right?
Yeah.
Is she deaf?
No, actually. She's not even real.
Mm-hmm.
You're not even real. I'm not real. None of this is real. You're in a simulation. Wake up, get up, stand up, go outside.
Hold on, wait.
Go! Run! Run!
And after that didn't help, I'd just keep watching, and eventually things started falling into place. I looked back at the Google Doc searching for a trend and found that every set of notes I took began and ended in the same way. I would start by asking why something was happening, then for the next few minutes I would theorize and inch closer and closer to the truth before finally seeing the reveal. Here's a great example of this. In this scene, we find Yuzuru crying underneath a waterfall, dressed up in a school uniform even though it's summer. Right now the viewer is asking questions. They want to know why this is happening, so they pick up on every little detail in order to figure it out. They notice that Yuzuru doesn't want Shoya to know what really happened because she's telling obvious lies. They notice that wherever she's going, she needs to be there soon. And the dead giveaway is when Shoya says he's worried about her and she responds with "Don't say something my granny would say." Then the reason behind all this strange behavior is revealed when Yuzuru arrives at her destination and we see a sign for her grandmother's funeral. Almost every scene is like this. It will intentionally leave out details and jump around to keep you guessing and engaged. Combine this with its fast pace, only ever showing the viewer what they need to see, and you have a tightly woven narrative that never gets boring. Nothing ever feels out of place or missing, which is good because if the pacing and flow of information is on point, it gives your main themes a chance to truly shine. And when it comes to this movie's themes, redemption is the name of the game. It's something that they build up for the entire film, starting with Shoya's less than stellar childhood. See, when you're a kid, you think you're the best person you know. You have no accountability because you aren't mature enough to know that you can do wrong. You don't know why you do the things you do because you never think about it, and eventually things catch up to you. You realize how selfish, awful, and stupid you were, so naturally you try to make up for it in some way. However, your actions have left scars on others as well as yourself that may never heal. People might lash out at you, scrutinizing you for trying to do the right thing because of what you did in the past, claiming it's hypocritical to try to be better. And for you, the idea of being reminded of the past is beyond embarrassing. It makes you sick to your stomach because it reopens an old wound and pours a pound of salt into it, as if you don't torture yourself over it enough already. It's an incredibly difficult journey that doesn't even promise a payoff, but it's the path that Shoya chooses to walk. I think his redemption works because of how honest it is, if that makes any sense. He doesn't expect anything from anyone, and yet he gives everything he can offer to them. The movie never puts his actions on a pedestal or tries to justify them, but it also never claims that he's beyond saving. It's a distinction that I believe all of the best stories with this theme understand.
I remember how this war started, what your kind did to mine. I can't forgive you, but you have my thanks.
And the best part is, Shoya doesn't carry this theme all by himself. Because I don't know if you know this, but about 75% of the cast makes a complete ass of themselves at some point in this film. Shoko's mom is violent and unforgiving with anyone who wrongs her daughter. Take the scene where she rips an earring off of Shoya's mom while it's still in her ear, for example. Ueno is the same old bully who can't let go of the past, and she irrationally hates Shoko because of it. Kawaii does some of the scummiest things in the movie by going along with the bullying and then acting all high and mighty about it later while placing all the blame on others. And Yuzuru is not the nicest kid when we first meet her.
西宮さんいますか？
いません。
いますよね。
いません。
I remember having discussions about this movie before my rewatch where I would say things like, oh, this character is a scumbag, there's nothing redeemable about them. But I've come to realize that this isn't the case at all. They're very stupid people who do some really awful things, sure, but none of them, let me repeat, not a single character in this movie is a bad person. Except maybe this bike thief. For every scene where a character mistreats someone, there's always a scene where they show the viewer that they're unmistakably human, horribly flawed, but filled to the brim with all the wonderful things that come with being one. Ueno's moment with Shoko at the end of the film, Yuzuru and Shoko's mom gradually turning their sour opinion of Shoya around. Even Kawaii shows us that there's a soul festering inside of her somewhere when she reunites with Shoko. A silent voice makes sure that it shows you the good in everyone, because this is a movie that wants the audience to believe in redemption. And because so many characters fit into this theme, I can't agree with the common criticism that this film has underwhelming side characters. To me, a side character gets by if they provide meaningful interactions with the main cast that further either the plot or themes of a film, and all of these characters do that. They're more so a tool than anything. I don't think a character like Tomohiro needed to have a major character arc because he helped Shoya make it through his, and he added some much needed lightheartedness to the film to boot. Do a lot of these side characters have major arcs in the manga that develop them further? Probably, but I don't really care because these characters, as they are in this movie, work. And if you remember the last video where I tore into this embarrassment of a film, you know what happens when a movie gets too ambitious with its cast. At this point, I'm sure I sound like a broken record. I've probably used 1,000 synonyms for the phrase movie good in this script so far, and I've covered every aspect about it that I can think of, so let's bring this full circle. I mentioned earlier that I never saw a full picture during my rewatch until the end of the movie, which makes it the perfect place to close things out. Every scene after Shoko's suicide attempt is spent returning all the goodwill that Shoya has put out into the world since it began. And also as a side note, this scene is really good. The way it builds tension by slowly revealing Shoko's intent. The way the camera smears as she steps onto the balcony. The fact that Shoya falls over here, making the audience think he's not going to make it in time. Then he screams her first name for the first time before charging forward, barely catching her. All the flashbacks that race through his mind, compelling him to put everything he has into saving her life. And finally, once he falls into the water in her place, I love the way it holds on this shot before revealing all the blood, and the way it fades to black to make sure it's the last thing you see. Okay, tangent over. Back to giving this kid the happy ending he deserves. For this entire movie, Shoya has been mending his relationships with everybody he knew in school, but once he goes into his coma, the shoe gets put on the other foot. This gives way to a ton of great character parallels. I like how Shoko does the same umbrella thing for Ueno that Shoya did for Yuzuru, and I especially like how she reassures Sahara, who's too ashamed to see Shoya again, by saying that she can change starting now. Like, dude. And to really nail home just how well crafted this film is, it does something that even the greatest films of all time tend to fail to do. It ends with its best scene. Shoya is at the school festival with his eyes glued to the floor because while he made a promise that he'd look everyone in the eye from now on, something is still holding him back from keeping it. It's only when he sees all of his friends again and realizes how much they all thought of him while he was in the hospital that he decides to push his anxieties aside and just enjoy the festival with everyone. So he steps outside, and slowly but surely, the voices of the crowds become clearer. All of the X's fall down, and the scene comes to life. There's such a contrast between this moment and the rest of the film. It's loud, it's vibrant, it's cluttered. It's alive. For the first time in what seems like forever, Shoya is able to take in the world around him unrestricted by his crippling fears. It sounds stupid, but he finally put the life back into his life, which is why as the music starts to calm down, you can hear the sound of a heartbeat. And that's how the film ends, by sending this broken, vulnerable character off with the first true sign that everything is going to be okay. If you couldn't already tell, I like this movie. I don't know how Yamada and her team managed to stitch this beast together so perfectly, but if it means anything, I'd like to say that I'm very happy they did. And something that's even more crazy is the fact that after 17 long years with Kyoto Animation, Yamada parted ways with the studio to go work for Science Saru. And because of this recent news, well, as recent as a video that takes 3 weeks to make can be, I just want to say thank you for all the great stuff you've put into the world. Believe it or not, there's one more movie of yours that I like more than this one, and I'm excited to talk about it soon. Your new show looks sick, by the way. Keep up the good work. And for the rest of you, have a good rest of your day, and make sure to drink lots of water. If you couldn't tell, I'm having a hard time figuring out how to end this video, so I'm just going to leave now.